Is anything that you learn in school useful anymore? Welcome to the General Podcast. This is a podcast series where we discuss events and issues so that students and everyone else can learn from them. I'm your host, Eunice.
And I'm your co-host, JH.
Today, we have another special guest, and his name is Stanley.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Guess who's back? Back
Stanley's
again. Alright, so is anything that you learned in school useful anymore? Recently, the news reported on Minister Ang, right, and his speech about transforming institutes of higher learning, IHL, during the Budget 2022 debate on 1st March, where he suggested the idea that degree certificates should expire after 5 years. So he believes that this radical idea is a way to push Singaporeans to constantly upgrade their skills and knowledge and be ahead of the rat race, specifically technology related. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Initially, I did manage to watch the video clip where he was sharing his segment in Parliament. Actually, I realized that the main thing that he was talking about, right, the key focus of it wasn't really about this idea about continually renewing certificates. There was actually much more behind it that I think somehow he started going off the track a little bit. So actually, one of the key points that he was mentioning was about that how young people, even without a uni degree, can continue to earn a decent living. That was the first point he was mentioning. And the second thing then he was saying was also related to this idea where, because, people when they start work and they go into certain industries, they need to continually refine their skills and learn along the way. So that was actually what he was capitalizing upon. So I did think that this idea of an expiry date for your degree is something that's very, very tone deaf and taken out of context. And initially, when I first heard this quote out, I'm thinking, man, are you really going to make me pay for my university degree every 5 years, even when I'm struggling with certain payments like right now? And is this going to apply to all Singaporeans? Is each and every single Singaporean going to be able to afford this idea of a renewal? So personally, I did think that this wasn't a very smart comment to make. After all, the way he qualified it was that this is a bit of a radical idea. Or what was the term that he was using?
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
Correct.
Yeah.
There is food for thought. But perhaps in this case, right, it didn't seem as though it should have been a food for thought to be thrown out in Parliament.
There's
Right.
a time and place for everything. Perhaps he could have shared his food for thought on a Facebook page, right? But
true.
then, when it comes to parliamentary hearing, he definitely needs to bring in more concrete evidence, more concrete examples. And I believe even if he were to put out this proposal, right, he needs to give a little bit more details and a bit more thought into whatever he's suggesting. So Stanley, what do you think about this 5-year expiry date?
Assuming it's not a food for thought,
Assuming it's not a food for thought.
Honestly, it's the one of the dumbest thing you can hear in a long time, right? Because if you just think about it, it's not just Singaporeans, just Singapore degrees to renew it every 5 years, right? Can Singaporeans afford it, right? And secondly, think about overseas people who came here to study, or people who go overseas after they get the degree. Every 5 years they come back here just to take how many years of education every 5 years? Your uni education is 4 years, 3 to 4 years. Every 5 years you study for 4 years. Come on lah, then the workforce divide by half. Don't make sense, right? And he talked about lifelong learning. The degree is not where you learn lifelong learning, right? You don't need a degree for lifelong learning. Think about technology. When you work in the IT sector, right, you yourself are already forced to progress because your bosses, your company will force you to learn the latest coding language, the latest processors, So it's like you won't even be outdated because you're already upgraded by your company. And your educators, you all know how long it takes to make a syllabus. How fast can educators make a syllabus every 5 years and it be good enough, comprehensive enough to teach to a population, right? And for that syllabus to last even 6 months or a year, right, it's very difficult. And you see, even normal now, the syllabus, it takes 10, 20 years, then they change one time. So for them to change the syllabus every 5 years, firstly, the educators will go crazy. Then secondly, 2027, when I go take my first renewal, right, it will be based on what? 2022 to 2027, which is outdated already. So it don't even make sense. You'll always be teaching the outdated versions. So it's it cannot run.
True.
Yeah.
So this also goes back to the point about what exactly is academic qualification for. Certain people would say that academic qualification is just proof, a cert, right? A tangible proof that you have done or gone through a course that is based on a specialized field. And then from there, you use that certificate to enter the workforce, right? But from then on, right, everything is to learn on the fly, right? And we also have other government initiatives like Skills Future, right? Which that one I would say is a very, very good initiative put forth by the government to encourage Singaporeans for any sort
Lifelong
of
learning,
skills and knowledge that they want to acquire that is not related to something that is examinable, right? So in order for you to get an academic qualification, you need to take a series of courses, modules, right? You need tests, examinations to demonstrate that you are qualified, and that's where the proof comes in. So then again, do you want somebody who is like 40 years old, okay, working in that particular industry for so long, suddenly having to go back and take a particular exam when the person who is doing this for so long has a lot of technical hands-on knowledge, but maybe when it comes to exams, theoretical, they may not be as updated, open quotes inverted, updated or well-versed in the latest theories, but they are very well aware of what is going on in the sector.
So Stanley was mentioning earlier on as well about this thing where, are you going to be expecting the educators to continually keep up with the latest developments? So Minister Ang did mention this point as well. The industry he was referencing was actually the cryptocurrency industry. I mean, cryptocurrency definitely has already been a thing for quite a long while, but who's to say that 5 years ago or like even 10 years ago, there would have already been leading experts on this particular subject matter, let alone to expect educators to be able to be the ones to churn out syllabus and knowledge and information about it. So this is already kind of like where there's most definitely already going to be a gap. And what if you would have suggested as well, Eunice, if you already have a lot of hands-on experience, like 30, 40 years of experience in something, in a particular field, and you are expected to go back to get updated by an outdated syllabus. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to note as well.
Right, let's go back to school context, right? Whatever we learn in school, especially in institutes of higher learning, the main objective, especially within a Singapore context, it's to be awarded with an academic qualification to enter the workforce. So we have common subjects such as the math and sciences, right? Where we build foundational knowledge, right, for each specific subject from primary to junior college. And then in university, we move on to study certain specialized fields, right, that each individual is interested in. I mean, even before university, there are other schools that focus on non-academic, more hands-on application like poly, as well as non-science subjects like the arts. But overall, the main intention of these institutes of higher learning, where individuals go into specialized fields, is to prepare you for the future, for the workforce. Whatever we are learning right now in schools, I mean, all of us have graduated already. JH, almost there. Okay, to what extent then is anything that we learn in schools considered useful?
Okay, I have lots to say about this bit because I'm still in the midst of it, right? So I have all this pent-up frustration that's in the midst of it. So speaking of specifically at the university level, or actually even at the polytechnic level, because one thing that I went through when I was in poly back then was that there are these specific subjects that they call interdisciplinary studies, which basically are topics and modules that are not directly related to your specialization, right? So in other words, if let's say I'm a communication student, they may try to teach me some subjects about sciences, some subjects about technology. And this is particularly prevalent now that I'm in uni because I am facing this similar interdisciplinary studies as well. So right now I'm in a humanities course, right? I'm learning literature and language. But one thing that the Institute of Higher Learning also tries to advocate for, and they do make it a compulsory module, which is they try to make us learn about technology and data sciences. So personally on my end, to say whether these knowledge, to have them about data sciences, is it useful? I mean, generically speaking, yes. But is it really going to be useful for me as a humanities student? I would say that is a very disputable fact, right? Because for me now as a student, right, okay, it brings me nothing but pain at the moment. It perhaps can be seen that like, I don't see the value of learning about how big data works at this juncture, perhaps. But maybe because you guys would have already gone through higher education, right? So maybe you can tell me, did you really find such modules useful so far?
Actually, personally, right, I think, right, it's got use lah. It's because if we look at subjects, right, as it is, right, then yeah, okay, there's no need for a humanities student to learn big data. There's no need for a IT student to learn humanities, to learn about history. But the thing is that if you look beyond it, right, then there maybe is a point lah. The first thing is that it broadens your horizon. Because right, if you think about it, if science students keep thinking and like studying in his field, he's developing like one side of his brain. And he just become a master of that side of that brain now. Then he doesn't use this other creative side or like more humanity side of his knowledge. So it becomes very one-sided, and it works the same way for the humanity side lah. Like when it comes to tech, you become like a total boomer suddenly. So in that sense, it makes you a more balanced person in terms of knowledge. And what I like to say about in education in school, right, it's not really about the subject they teach you, it's more about the skill you learn, which is, to me, I like to say the skill is critical thinking. And I think there's critical thinking to be taught and learned in humanities and in IT, sciences and stuff, right? But the thing is that if you keep learning your critical thinking from one aspect, right, then it's very narrow. In the end, you lose out because you don't broaden your horizon. You tunnel vision. In the end, right, the critical thinking also sort of like it become less effective. But if you train yourself, right, in being able to critically think in several type of faculties, right, or area of knowledge, right, then your critical thinking become really damn vast and it's like a real skill now. So if you think about it, like example, in terms of exercise, right, bicep strength, somebody, right, can do push-up every day, right? He do so much push-up, he can do 50, 100 push-up in a row. But you bring him to the chin-up bar, he cannot even do one. Why? His bicep strong, what, right? Because his muscle, right, is only used to that action, used to that exercise. That's why he got used to it. That's why it becomes easy. But did he really become strong? If he was really strong, he would have been able to carry himself on a pull-up bar. So it's the same thing. Why he needs to do both push-up and pull-up, right? Is because it will make his muscle strong, right? And not just a facade, like, oh, because he actually just got used to the movement, he's now actually strong because he used his bicep in many motions lah. He not just used to one range of motion. So to me, when I think of critical thinking, I think of it that way lah. It's not being used to think critically only in your area of study. That's why I feel like if we think like that, then interdisciplinary studies, right, is actually decently useful. And I did enjoy it quite a bit when I was in SUTD. Yeah.
So then what kind of counter argument would you propose to students who say, well, I get critical thinking, but why is it that I have to study cosine, sine, tangent when I'm not going to even use it, let's say even if I go into accountancy?
Yeah, same thing. It is basically, the point is not about learning cosine, sine, tangent. It's about being able to problem solve, and problem solve in a medium that you don't like or you're not used to. So it's like, example, everybody, right, in the class don't know how to do this problem. One student know how to do the problem, right? Then he goes up to the board and show everybody how to do. It shouldn't be a fact, oh, okay, yeah, I do like that. If you actually decide to try to think in the mind of this student and not just assume he's a genius, right? Think about his train of thought, his process, right? Then you'll be able to see, oh, shit, he managed to do it because he saw it this way, which leads him to see it this way, then this way, then this way. Then that's how you know that, oh, this allowed him to reach this final decision. Then if you look at humanities also, sometimes your friend can come up with sort of argument which you didn't even think of it that way. Why didn't you think of it that way, right? So being able to be cross-disciplinary, right, allows you to see many people different train of thought. Like what I say, you practice your brain in many different scenarios. So you become naturally a better thinker.
What you're saying here is that whatever we are taught in schools is not supposed to be based on subjects, but more of the skill that is behind these subjects, which is critical thinking and problem solving.
Then that will be easier for you to swallow also lah. That you need to learn something you don't like.
All right. And what would you say about having to study all these different subjects? Okay, yes, critical thinking is important, problem solving is very important, but why is it that at a younger age, right, especially like if you're in secondary, you take so many subjects, you take E-math and you take A-math, and then after that you have sciences, you have biochem and physics, right? And then only after that, when you grow older, then you start to kind of be more specialized in specific fields. So why is it that we cannot start earlier with this specialized thing?
For me, I personally think is that firstly, in lower and upper sec, right, they teach you all this is to train ability to think properly. Once you have the ability to think, then that's where you can start specializing in any field. Because the key here is to be able to think you can do so much more.
That was also a very interesting point, right? I do agree with that respect as well. Then leaders, earlier on you mentioned something that was pretty interesting about at a younger age, like maybe lower to upper sec, it's better to be more general. Like you don't specialize first, so that after you learn critical thinking, then you know what you want and you know what to specialize in. On a more individual level, perhaps one other way to see that as well is that maybe if you specialize in something way too early? And what if down the line you realize that, hey, this is actually not something I want to do? Which I would say actually is quite a lot of individuals around our age, they do face. I do have a lot of friends who whatever that they study in uni, if they did accountancy, if they did business, and right now they are either they sign on to be an army officer or they
Like
are...
me,
You got sign on,
I
man?
study IT, I go become agent. Right?
Oh,
Right. So where does all this knowledge then even go, right? I mean, there's nothing completely wrong with it, right? If you study accountancy, but eventually you decide that that's not something that you want to do, and you decide to move on to something different altogether, like tech. So for me, this is where it comes off as like a little bit more interesting, because this whole discussion about like needing to know general knowledge, know everything, I mean, it's definitely good to have, but at the end of the day, I still feel like you're still always very, very caught up in the rat race. And this whole idea about having qualifications being important for your job, right? I do feel that it's actually just the starting point of everything.
Another thing that I would also like to kind of consider regarding this education route, right? Yes, we are living in a rat race, and eventually we have to choose specialized fields so that we can graduate and then apply that into the workforce, right? More often than not, it is the math and sciences, the STEM fields that people often feel that they should specialize in order to get a job, right? Have a stable income when they graduate and enter the workforce. So yes, I do agree that, it's good to be general, okay? So you are exposed to different types of skills and knowledge, right? Both arts related, sciences related, to train your problem solving and your critical thinking. But at the same time, reality sinks in, and many people are kind of, open and close inverted commas, forced in some way or pressured in some way to choose STEM fields, because that seems to be the one that somehow is the center of attention for many, many industries or in Singapore context. So the need for critical thinking in other fields somehow become less important because of what society wants, or what society, what do you call this?
Dictates as what is useful.
What
the
is useful,
best.
correct. So what do y'all think about this whole entire emphasis on STEM fields, right? Science, tech, engineering, and mathematics being seen as the more useful, more feasible option?
There's 2 points to that question. Firstly, right, is that the part where you say, then where's the use for the humanities side of critical thinking example, right? So I would say then the same point still, it just makes you a more well-rounded thinker. But the main point of that question is that why is there so much focus on the STEM field, right? I think it's a very straightforward answer for me, is that it's because that's where the money is at, like in terms of not pay investors money. How this world runs, right? This world runs by where money is injected into. Where money is injected to is where money can be made, right? How much money can be made from learning about history, right? How much money can be made from learning about, there's this new island in geography. There's not much money there to be made. In the end, the money that's made, right, is where health, which is the science, tech, crypto, whatever, all these like math and sciences. So that's why there's so much emphasis on that. It's just because that's where the money is flowing, and that will be the case in the foreseeable future, because that's where human advances as a whole.
I do fully agree with that as well, though. This idea about usefulness, right, of the subjects or like even the things that we learn is always tied to the sciences because of the monetary value that's involved. On that note, I mean, with regard to that as well, this idea of usefulness is actually also constantly changing. I mean, back in our time, let's say, even if we're just looking at STEM, back in our parents' generation, maybe one thing they will always encourage us is go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, right? Because those are the higher paying ones. But in today's context, like maybe in our generation next time, they'll tell you, go be an artist so you can create NFTs and you can earn the most money.
They probably say be a coder.
Or, probably even ask you to go into tech. So I would say that like this idea of usefulness is always changing in relation to money. So yeah, that's something I do fully agree with as well.
Well, there's another perspective that we can take as well. The idea of usefulness as perhaps initially it being useless, but then in future it may be useful, right? So, I mean, we place so much emphasis on the sciences, yes, but at the same time, we also have seen many, many people who do very well when they are in the arts sector, specifically in entertainment. Right? You have your content creators, you have YouTubers, you have like your TikTokers and all that. So all these, they have married the use of technology with their creative aspect, right? So perhaps they are very good as artists, they are very good as video editors, filmmakers, right? They are all part of the art scene, but because they use technology, they are able to leverage the most advanced technologies or the recent trends,
The
technological
latest
trends and all that, right? That's why they have become so successful, even more successful than the average accountant, the average supposedly tech IT developer or software. So what is useless now may be useful in future, specifically relating to arts, right? That's what I was talking about. That aside, let's talk about values. For example, being responsible, being disciplined, right? Self-discipline and all that. That is what we call the hidden curriculum as educators, right? Which is called hidden curriculum because it's not explicitly taught in schools, but it's something that educators or the good educators will try to cultivate in their students. So intangible values, right? Values that are being learned in schools, they may not seem very important at the start, but in future, they may end up being very important. So a lot of these things that we consider as useful can also be seen from a standpoint of hindsight. Right? In hindsight, there are certain points or certain highlights in my academic journey that made me realize, actually I did something that's related to this value, or I had an opportunity to cultivate that value, and therefore it made me who I am today. Right? So are there any instances, good or bad, where you find that perhaps educators are the key factor, right, when they are teaching hidden curriculum or cultivating values, or perhaps even passion towards that subject?
I think for me, right, is this big point in my life.
Okay.
Right? So I think I finish the story that I know the value. So last time in Set 1, Set 2, we had art curriculum in my secondary school. Then after that, when you go Set 3, you can still pick art as your +7 subject. Then I was in combined science. Then I took art as my extra subject. So right, I mean, I like art quite a lot lah. But then got one day, my teacher, right, that's the most screwed up thing that ever happened in my life. Yeah, so basically, right, my classmate, right, was beside me, right, playing with his drawing block. Then he is taking the drawing block and clack, 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 like just drop. You know when the drawing block hit the table, then very loud,
Being a
right?
nuisance.
Yeah, he sit beside me. Then, right, the teacher looked back straight away, right. I wasn't even holding a damn drawing block. He was. Who's the one making that noise? It's you, right, Stanley? Then I was like, no. Then she's like, it's you. I say it's you means it's you. That's it. I was like, what? What are you talking? It's not me. I didn't even have the drawing block. Then she's like, I don't care. I say it's you, it's you. Then you apologize now. Then I was like, what are you talking about? Then she's like, you get out of class now. Then after that, I was like, okay, then I get out. One thing in my life I hate is I cannot get accused
for things you didn't do.
I didn't do what. And that day onwards, right, I quit art straight away. Next day, I quit art and I had appeal, right? And I took the test that is required to go to pure science. Yeah, so I upgrade. I forced my way all the way up just to quit art. This teacher taught me, right, how much of a stubborn and bad human being you are, right? To not want to admit a simple mistake like calling out the wrong person like that, and want to force it on a child, right, that he's wrong. And just because you are in a position of power.
Do you think that could have influenced your decision later on in life to be an insurance agent, freelance?
I would say maybe because like as a agent, right, if a client asks me a question and I don't know, then I guess I will not lie my way through it. I will always say that, okay, I don't know, let me check for you. Right? Because I know that it's not right to lie. And if I ever make a mistake with my client stuff, which haven't happened, I would say, I would definitely say that you definitely have to admit your mistake instead of just using another lie to cover through. You must be willing to admit mistakes. So that's the hidden value.
Especially if you're in a position of power.
Yeah, especially
right?
in a position of power where technically we have so much chance to abuse the trust of our clients. But then the point is to not.
So educators definitely have a significant impact on children's development, as well as the perception towards not certain subjects as well, but perhaps it's also a kind of like a reflection of what you don't like. Right, so that incident made you realize that this is what I cannot stand for and what I didn't like. And in future, right, you will actually try your best to avoid replicating such a situation. And it helps you better to understand who you are as a person, because you know you don't like this kind of thing and this thing has happened to you before. Right, similarly, when I was in junior college, and I wasn't on very good terms with my GP teacher, honestly. Okay, my general paper. So it's a bit of an irony and a bit of a shocker that I'm now a GP teacher. Our class was not a class that she had a very good impression on. Okay, she prefers the sciences classes. And then our class was kind of like a hybrid of sciences and arts. Although we are considered science, but our H1's art subjects, right, was like sapalang, like geography, history, something literature, that kind of thing. So she didn't really pay much attention to us. And I also don't really care so much about her in GP classes. But I managed to get an A, so... Alright, so the point here is not the flex about my grade, okay? The point here is that no, it's not. Okay, I'm just trying to say here that I'm saying that even though she didn't have a huge impact on my grade, because she didn't, right? She didn't really teach me much stuff. But at the same time, it kind of gave me a better perspective of who I don't want to be as an educator. So I always tell myself, say, no matter what, right? You cannot be biased, okay? Just because you have your own personal assumptions, right? That doesn't mean that you have to place your assumptions on these students, because the harm and the impact that you have is much greater on the student than on you. Right? So for Stanley, because of that teacher, right, you didn't have the you didn't have the opportunity to arts.
Maybe.
Yeah, you could have been an artist. You could be the next Picasso, Singapore Picasso.
In fact, that was my art style, cubism.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can imagine Stanley doing that.
Yeah. So
Dude, I was good,
it does definitely take on that particular point, right? So on the point of values, let's talk a little bit about what do we wish schools could have taught us instead.
On that note, right, I mean, I do feel as though one thing that is very, very important that do need to be taught, especially in schools, which is also one of the things that's kind of the part of the hidden curriculum, is this idea of mental well-being. Because earlier on, I was mentioning as well about students constantly being in rat race. After all, you need to be not just a specialist, but at the very start, you need to be the best at every single thing. But I do feel as well that it is important to do a stock take from time to time for students who do feel burnout. And I do think that in this sort of situations, there need to be certain teachers as well who are able to be there to give these students these sort of positive influences rather than negative.
I think students, and not just students, like employees, right, also have to understand that your bosses, your teachers, right, they are there to push you, to bring you to the next level, not just let you be where you are. So your boss or your teacher will always be telling you about what's next. If you just pass a test, they can say good job, but right after that, you can always bet your bottom dollar they got to say, right, let's go for 60, let's go for 70%, let's go 80%, 90%, 100%. The thing is that they are there to push you. But I agree that this may sometimes, if not done in moderation, will lead to a student's burnout, because they're like, I tried so hard to get 50 and now I gotta go 60. Then I think this balance might have to come from parenting, maybe. Parents maybe shouldn't be the one pushing their children, because your child is really facing so much out there. The educators and his bosses will be there pushing him already. There's no need for you to come home and tell him that he needs to do better also. He probably heard it outside already. So it's like the parents should probably be the safe haven for them, teach them how to regulate their emotions. Yeah. So that's what
That's true, because I mean, talking about Singapore context, right? Earlier on, when the PSLE results came out, before that, there were a host of messages that came through the social media platforms, both from MOE, different educators, where they basically share messages to the PSLE children saying that whatever it is, everyone is very proud of you. You have done enough, right? You have worked hard enough, and just receive the results and see where you can go from there. So nothing is like an end all be all. You definitely have the ability and the potential to excel even beyond that. It's important, I think, as parents as well as educators, I would say. Educators do share a little bit because they can't always be pushing the children to kind of not be a specific role, like be a pusher or somebody who just let them be whoever they need to be, but more of to impart the importance of having to manage your expectations, right? Obviously, for younger learners, this will take a little bit of a different form. Okay, it has to be a bit more TLC, tender loving care, because they're younger. But for older learners, right, it's about learning that there are always going to be failures and successes, right? And more often than not, your failures is going to take a blow on your self-esteem. But at the same time, that does not define you. You have to also look beyond that and strive to achieve success. So the importance of managing yourself, your expectations, it's something that is not taught much in schools, right? It's a hidden curriculum, but at the same time, perhaps it needs to be explicitly mentioned by the educators, right? Because employers are not going to be doing that. Okay, that's not their job. Their job is to make sure the company is profitable. Yeah,
Money.
okay? So apart from values, right, we talk about the importance of financial literacy as well. So this is something that I have asked quite a few people around me, and they have shared that they wish financial literacy was more heavily emphasized in schools. So since Stanley, you are a financial planner, so maybe you can share with us a little bit more about your perceptions or even your clients' perceptions of insurance, right, which is related to wealth and health, and what are their general understanding of their personal finances and all that.
Yeah, I think there's a need for Singapore education to teach financial literacy and insurance in a sense at an earlier stage. But you cannot teach it too early also, because when you teach it at primary school level, right, I feel the kids don't understand responsibility yet. But then to teach it at a, like, let's say upper secondary to JC or poly stage, right, that's a good time to teach it, because that's where your also money starts coming in, because you start working part-time, example. Why I say so is because, let's say when I ask a lot of my clients, right, firstly I just ask this question, oh, what insurance you have? I would say 95% of my clients, right, oh, my parents settle for me. They don't even know what they have. Everything is their parents settle for them. They have no idea of it. They only know, oh, I just got how much in my bank account. That's their idea of finance. But they don't know about their insurance at all. When you look at financial portfolio, right, it's a holistic thing. It's not just about how much you invest and how much you have saved, how much you make from your job. It's about what happens if on the event, some health issues that happen to you, right, that will ruin your entire wealth. You also don't want it to happen. But the thing is that why you have to prepare for it is because, right, if it happens, right, can you stomach it? You can't. Most people can't. Most people cannot take the fact that, oh, suddenly one surgery is going to come, right, and cost them 30,000-40,000, right? That's why they should prepare for it, even if probability is not going to happen to them. So you want to make sure that you prepare for it. But it's not something that is well known, because why? A lot of people is like they protected by their parents. So they always feel like, oh, my parents always got my back. But when you start going to adulthood, right, you need to know that it's supposed to be you got their back already, you know?
Do you think that this point that you're sharing, right, should it be taught in mainstream schools? Not just like an average like course, oh, this is the insurance course. Cause like in university, right, I remember we have to attend insurance talks, and then people just see it as hard selling. They don't see it as like it's an educational course to kind of help you understand better what insurance is.
The syllabus for that definitely has to be more thought out than what I'm gonna say. I would say definitely lah. So it will be more of like when they want to teach this kind of course, right, they have to teach not just how to make your upside, but how to cover your downside, which most people wouldn't think about lah. They always look up only, then they don't realize they're walking on a glass bridge that can break anytime. So if they were to make a financial literacy kind of course, right, then they have to be this kind of balance. Or it's not just about managing your budget, managing how to spend money, what to do with your money, where to invest, what kind of investments there are. You know, it's not just like that, right? It's more of you need to also think of it very holistically.
On that note though, personally I do think that, like, especially in Singapore, or rather an Asian societal thing, it seems to me as though that everything is handled by their parents. Parents don't have this discussion with their children at the first place.
True.
Yeah. So to me, it will seem as though like, yeah, it's definitely very important actually to bring in financial literacy as a subject even.
Actually, in our insurance industry, right, we have a lot of these people called trainers. And these trainers are not existing agents, but some of them used to be. So I would say these people will fit the criteria. They're definitely not going to make profit of you besides their salary. Then they have the knowledge because they were once agents.
What do you think about making an exam?
The topic on this kind of financial literacy thing is a very simple topic that is very hard to make a test out of it and make the test rigorous enough for you to like, stump somebody. Like what? You got 2K. Now you got to decide. Xiaoming got 2K. He makes 2K a month. He spends $500 on food. How much should he spend on investment? Like, come on. Like,
Hey, really, I think that's a very good question.
Actually, it is a good question though. I must
Really,
yeah,
I feel like
it should be open-ended. Cannot be like closed-ended.
Okay. I guess I can make syllabus now.
Case study scenarios and all that, right? I think that would be quite.
But then
quite
that's
good.
one question only. Like, how many other questions can he have? You like need 10
You'll
questions.
be surprised.
Everyone's scenario is going to be different. It's not just Xiaoming. What about
Yeah.
Xiaohua?
Yeah.
Xiaohua
Because
parents
that's what's
just passed
happening.
away and left him with $1 million.
Yes.
What should he do?
Yeah. Case
Wow.
studies. Oh yes. Okay. So one more question for you, Stanley.
Okay.
Let's say since we are doing a public service announcement about insurance, right? What do you think are the most important insurance policies that, in general, everybody in the population should have?
I think hands down, right? The most important insurance, you can debate to me whether you want any other insurance, right? Well, this one you cannot debate, which is hospital insurance, which is your MediShield upgrade. So most people only have their MediShield, which is compulsory by the government. But the thing is that this MediShield is very limited in terms of coverage. It only covers the cheaper wards, and each procedure also got a lot of limits. So that's not enough. So you definitely need to upgrade it such that to at least cover all the public hospitals. If you can just max it out and go for coverage for the private hospitals also. Why? Because right, hospital cost right is one of the most expensive thing in Singapore. You'll be surprised just any casual surgery 20, 30K, you're gone. That's why I feel it's the most important insurance you want to have is hospital insurance. And it's cheap. There's no other way to say it, but it's that cheap. Imagine paying $1 a day, right? And right, the next year you can claim 30K like that. You know how many Singaporeans must pay $1 a day for you to claim your 30K or not? Monetary wise, it don't make sense for the insurance company. Yeah, but still it's so cheap for you already, just get it and get yourself covered. Because like, if one hospital bill comes to you, right, most normal Singaporeans cannot take it properly. And don't talk about two if two comes.
All right. Thank you so much for watching and listening in on our podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe.
Okay, and also do comment down below whether whatever you've learned in school continues to be relevant today.
And we will see you in the next video. Bye.